Days 25 and 26 on the Shikoku 88 Temple Pilgrimage Trail had been days of mostly walking, but also days full of choices. Day 25 started off great with my visiting of temple number 39 in Koji. Got there early in the morning before anyone else was visiting, so I got to read some sutras by the dawn early light at a very empty temple, which was not huge but kind of spacious, and it was nice having it all to myself. Though I didn't have it completely to myself, the monks who I think ran the temple, his wife and 3-year-old daughter were there, and the daughter was running around the koi pond looking at the fish and was quite cute and adorable and added some lightheartedness to the early morning visit. I then headed out, and in the city the trail was really quite poorly marked, so I got lost a bit. Then I finally found the Ohenro Trail, and Day 25 and 26 are full of choices. Mostly Highway 56 takes you between Temple 40 and 41. It's a really long haul, so you can go along the highway, but they're also people complain about the walking along the highway next to trucks, so they're trying to recreate trails away from the highway. I found the trail away from the highway, but it was up through the mountains. It was wonderful. It made me, I history geeked out a bit. I was up through the mountains, and I discovered tiny little villages and realized just like every nook and cranny in Japan was crammed full of farmland. And it made me think about the cadastral survey that Toyotomi Hideyoshi carried out, and just how difficult that is to measure every piece of land and evaluate it. And more than passing some of the other farms on this trip and other land, it really made me think of just how there's so little farmland in Japan, and how they make use of every little bit of it. And even in the past, the woodlands were very important because wood was used for everything from heating to building. So walking through the woods and down into the valley and then back up into the woods gave me a great historical geek experience. It was a wonderful trail. The problem was it probably added an hour to my time. I enjoyed walking through the woods and going through these tiny, tiny little villages, but it was also a much longer route, and that's what I mean by choices. At one point yesterday, I was coming on the old route, and I came across a sign that sort of said, go left one way or go right. Both would get me to the temple, or both would get me to where I was headed, but one way was 6 kilometers according to GPS, and the other way was 24 kilometers. So it made me think, who's going to go on this old Ohenro path that is 4 times longer? The path I took was still through tiny little roads, single lane roads through farmland. The old Ohenro path seemed intriguing to me, but also seemed like the thing that would be nice to do as a weekend hike if I lived in Shikoku. So again, just every nook and cranny of Japan is used for farmland, and I've seen every space in cities and elsewhere have little rice paddies and things like that, but in walking the Ohenro, really experienced the deep into the crevice of a river valley. You see people using every piece of land. I left Kochi yesterday and came into Ehime, so it's the third of the 4 provinces that I will be walking through. The morning section of the trail was really poorly marked yesterday, but by the afternoon it was really well marked. There was this one section, I don't know if it was because of Kochi or because of Ehime, but this one section of the road was, every turn was really, 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 really well marked. There was giant signs saying, go straight, go left. Up until this point, usually when you had a turn, there'd be a small sign. This one had really big, I can't see where my hands are on the camera, really big wooden signs saying, turn left or go straight, which was, I welcomed that addition to following the Ohenro Trail. Near the end of yesterday, I came across 2 elderly pilgrims. It turns out they were 66 years old. They are getting up from a rest stop, and I saw them way ahead, and then I caught up to them and passed them and just said good afternoon and got to the temple. And they got there a little after me and then left before me. I spend a lot of time at the temples reading sutras and then filming them. Turns out we were staying at the same inn. So then I showed up at the inn run by a 72-year-old woman who happened to have been born in Korea. She was an interesting woman, and I didn't quite understand everything, but I think because this other couple made a late reservation, she was unable to cook a meal for me, so we all went out to a sushi dinner. It was nice, it was delightful, but it was just a strange change of plans. The fee for staying at the inn was much less, but the meal was much more expensive. Staying at the inns is between $6,000 and $7,000 with 2 meals, and that really works out great. And I'm actually really kind of enjoying it, though. The meals are a lot of fish and vegetables and salads. They're great, though they kind of repeat themselves. Every so often I just love a dinner of curry rice or something a little bit different. Tonight, for example, I'm staying at a business motel, and I went looking for restaurants. There was a yakitori place nearby, and I didn't feel like going out and having an expensive dinner, so I went to Lawson's and got mabu tofu. But it's kind of nice knowing you're going to an inn and having a set meal. Don't have to worry about anything. So yesterday started off well, but ended kind of strange. The inn, our rooms were right next to each other with sliding paper doors, and then the top of it was an open lattice work. So I could literally see the light on in the room, and I could hear everything they were saying. They went to bed around 8, which I go to bed early, but that was even earlier than I go to bed. So I was trying to watch TV quietly. I couldn't really edit a movie. I couldn't make my daily diary movie. So I ended up going to bed a little bit early. I just woke up early. Again, up till now I've been waking up early, but turning on the news and watching TV. Because I didn't want to make any noise to wake up my neighbors, I just got up and got on the road early. Today I set a really long haul for myself, which was 40K. This is the first day I've ever walked in my life, as far as I know. I wasn't keeping track earlier, but of over 50,000 steps was today. About 27 miles altogether. My legs are killing me. I am exhausted, and it's one reason I didn't search too far and wide for a restaurant. Coming back to the idea of choices, at one point there was this indication of a path. Much of the day I was walking along the highway. In sections there was an Ohenro path that would take sort of an old road next to the highway, so you're away from the highway and barreling trucks, which was quite pleasant. And actually following the highway took me to fishing villages. For one, I'm not sure, maybe 10-kilometer stretch, I was walking through a pearl farming village and just saw all the pearl farming equipment and people, pearl farming, doing all their work. It was quite fascinating. So if I had taken the mountain path, I would have missed that. So there's these choices of take the ocean path and sometimes be next to a highway, or take the mountain path and have solitude but miss the ocean. The mountain paths looked fascinating, and I'm sure it would have been an interesting hike through the mountains, but it was also a 450-meter hike up to the mountain and then over, and I just wasn't up for that. Later in the day, I came across an interesting choice of, there was a tunnel, and then they had Ohenro Path. The tunnel was the longest one I have met to date. It was 1,700 meters, a little over a mile long. Up to this point, the longest tunnel I've met was about a mile. And then there was a sign saying take the Ohenro Path, which would be up and over the mountain. So it's basically double walking through the tunnel. Though to be fair, I don't know where it exited. I don't know if it exited on the other side of the tunnel or farther down. But the peak of the mountain was 1,700 meters, so definitely it would have added an hour of time. I'd already walked 30K, which is about 18 miles. I was getting kind of tired and decided to go to the tunnel, put on my mask, and walked on through. One of the highlights for the day is I was on the Ohenro Trail next to the highway. A benefit of walking on the highway is you might come across a restaurant or a place to stop and rest, whereas the Ohenro Trail, you're going more through farmland and farming villages. But I was on the Ohenro Path, and there was a sign for a rest stop, and I was heading towards the rest stop, crossed a bridge onto the highway, and I saw a fluttering sign and a swirling siren type of marker indicating some sort of store. Up to now, sometimes it's been misleading. 2 days ago I saw that same sort of thing and, oh man, there's going to be a restaurant. And it was a chiropractic office, so that was kind of disappointing. But today it was a yakiniku restaurant. Really quite a fancy yakiniku restaurant in the middle of nowhere. Went in exhausted and ordered just the lunch special. A big plate of yakiniku, rice, side dishes, kimchi, soup. 700 yen. Roughly $6. It was an amazing deal. Couldn't believe how cheap it was. So that was a great highlight of the day. I think I've mentioned this, but in walking through the countryside, it's amazing how few young people you see and how old everything is. I've passed abandoned karaoke places, which are kind of common, but also abandoned pachinko parlors. And yesterday, a huge abandoned bowling alley that there are just not enough young people to keep it going. So the countryside is really, most of the farmers I've seen are really elderly women, probably in their 70s, 80s, 90s, farming a little plot of land of their own, and some younger men, but they're probably in their 50s and 60s. It's the countryside in Japan, and I imagine elsewhere in the world, is aging rapidly and going to be abandoned soon. So today was a long, long walk. Tomorrow should be shorter. I'm going to visit a bonsai early in the morning and then hit 3 temples. And then I actually have reservations for the next 3 days because hit the bonsai and then 3 temples, stay at an inn, and then hit another bonsai and stay at a business hotel for 2 nights because the third bonsai number 8, is a full hike in and of itself. It takes a whole day to get there. It's about 24 kilometers round trip. I'm not exactly sure how far from the place I'm staying, but roughly 24 kilometers round trip, and an 800-meter hike up a mountain. So that's what I got ahead of me, and looking forward to it. Right now, pretty exhausted and just want to crash.